This Week in Radio Tech, episode 243, is brought to you by Axia Audio and the new Fusion AOIP mixing console, packed with features refined from a decade of IP audio experience. By the Telos ProStream X2 and 9X2 audio processing and stream encoding software with adaptive streaming technology. And by Lavo and the new Crystal Clear Virtual Radio Console. Crystal Clear is the radio console with a multi-touch touchscreen interface. Hey, Andy Laird's resume includes a BA in physics and a career of reaching positions of higher and higher responsibility in television and radio engineering. What's not on his resume are things like sailing the Drake Passage, getting shipwrecked on a small island, and being a champion weightlifter. Chris Tarr and Chris Tobin join me talking with Andy Laird on TWiRT. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. So glad you're here. This is our 243rd episode. I'm going to be surprised by the number every episode we do here, because this has just been going on for, almost 5 years. And it's just been a delightful thing to do almost every week, where we bring you some news from the radio technology industry. We talk about the technology itself, audio, RF, digital, analog, and whatever else we can find. And sometimes we get to bring you some really interesting guests who are nearly as interesting as our usual co-hosts. First of all, let's bring in our two co-hosts from his lair in Mukwonago, Wisconsin. The seldom seen but often thought of Chris Tarr. Hey, Chris, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Kirk. It's good to be back. Not as frequently as I used to, but hopefully we'll get that changed. It's so many things going on in life right now, but here I am, Director of Engineering for Intercom Milwaukee and Intercom Madison, as well as a contributing writer for Radio Guide Magazine, and all around good guy.
And the Geek Jedi.
That is true. The Geek Jedi,
yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Actually, I heard a theory this last week that, you also call yourself the Ninjaneer, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I didn't come up with that one. That was actually given to me. But yes,
I heard a theory this week that actually all countries actually have ninjas. It's just that the Japanese ones are so slow that we found out about them.
I think I would be that kind of slow guy. You look at me and you really don't think stealth fast ninja. I'm just saying.
Okay. Someday we'll have to talk about how you got that handle, that moniker. Hey, also with us, the best dressed engineer in radio from New York City at a building where I got to visit a couple times already. It is Chris Tobin. Hey, Chris, tell us what's going on and where you're at.
Well, if you take a look at the mic flag for those which watch the video, and for those who are listening, this is the WOR 710 AM studios here at the iHeart Media Building, which is at the Avenue of the Americas, the former AT&T building. When you come into the lobby, you get to see all the Art Deco 1930s stuff from the back in the AT&T days. But this is one of the control rooms. And there's 1, 2, 3 rooms. The other studio is currently running a sports show, I believe. And that's where I'm at. So we're having an SBE meeting here in the theater, the iHeart Media Theater downstairs. That's one of the reasons why I'm here. I'm not here to promote anything in particular other than SBE.
I see in front of you a good-looking SAS console. Yes, it's not one of our sponsors, but still we have to recognize they're gorgeous and well-built consoles. And also to your left is a phone that looks beautiful.
Phone? What phone? I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, look at that. It's a Telos VX. Excuse me. Hello? John Gambling's not here anymore. Sorry.
I thought that was a Panasonic. Is that a Panasonic there? Or a Kobe or something
hardly.
Like that?
Hardly. Oh, if Panasonic built that phone, I tell you,
hello,
it cost
Joe
a lot
Franklin?
less.
No, that's WR TV. Joe Franklin's not here either. Sorry. Goodbye.
Well,
all right,
hey,
long John Nebel for you.
Chris, welcome in, and let's go ahead and bring our guest in, then we'll mention our sponsors real quickly. And that is Andy Laird. Andy Laird from Milwaukee. Welcome in. How are you?
Great. Thank you very much. I imagine I'm not the only one that's ever worked on a Panasonic phone. I'm glad those are history.
Yeah, I seem to spend some time destroying them, like drilling holes and putting RCA jacks for, tapping across the speaker, put a little transformer in there back when I worked in stations that could not possibly afford a telephone hybrid. We would just tap off the speaker and run that to the console.
Oh.
Anybody else do that, or is that just cheapo me?
No. Oh, no, I've done it.
Two of us are cheapo.
We've all done it. I've done it too.
Really long in the tooth. That was a quick and dirty way without decent hybrids to just get a quick on air. There was just no other way around it.
Yeah, yeah. So, Andy, we gave you short shrift on the introduction. Now, I'm a little confused. Are you the or the former VP of Engineering and CTO for Journal Broadcast Group?
The former. I am now, I'm in my third week of retirement.
I got to ask you how that feels in just a minute.
Oh, the first week was so weird. But even this Sunday, as we were kind of getting ready to go to bed, I'm like going, let's see, what do I have to get? And then I just go, wait a minute, I don't have to get anything. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey,
I'm keeping my thumb in the pie, with doing little projects and did a little pro bono work with WTMJ to finish up a project that I'd been working on for some time that we weren't able to complete before my retirement. So that wrapped up yesterday.
Gotcha. Hey, I want to welcome our sponsors in. This is episode 243 of This Week in Radio Tech, and our show is brought to you by the folks at Lavo with their Crystal Clear console, also by the folks at ProStream. That's a Telos company, and they make this fantastic new software that does audio processing and stream encoding, and also by Axia and the new Axia Fusion console now shipping. We're going to hear from each of those sponsors during the show, and thank you for patronizing these sponsors. They really do. They put out money, real money, that helps make this show possible, both from my point of view and from Andrew Zarian's point of view at the GFQ network. So thanks very much for your patronizing these sponsors. All right. Hey, a few weeks ago, I got word that Andy Laird, that there was more to Andy Laird than I knew. And Andy, I suppose I met you probably 12 or 13 years ago in Milwaukee, and I probably had an Omnia audio processor under my arm. And I walked up to the doors there at Journal Broadcasting and somehow got introduced to you. And we may have even tried a processor on the air. I don't remember. So tell us kind of about where you've come from there.
Well, and at that 12 years ago, I was vice president of engineering for the radio group. I joined Journal in 1998 to help them grow on the radio side. And from that came eventually television and IT under my arm also. But at the time you walked in with the Telos, actually we did, at that time, I think we had a Telos AM, and I know that across the group we bought some of the, I'm sorry, Omnia processor. We had also bought other Omnias through the years, and then recently quite a bit of the 11. We have some 9s also.
And then I want to, as we move to the interview, we'll talk a bit about your remodeling a few years ago with all new consoles and routing and that kind of thing. But we're not here to talk all about our sponsors gear. Where I want to know what you're passionate about in terms of broadcast engineering and the interesting things that you do outside of that realm of broadcast engineering. It occurs to me, of course, Chris Tarr and you, Andy, are almost neighbors. You've probably been to many of the same transmitter sites. Chris Tarr, why don't you jump in here and chit-chat a bit with Andy for us?
Well, no, I met Andy actually through Clay Freinwald from Seattle, who was at the time a regional engineer for Intercom, and he came to town, and the three of us went to lunch, and I got a tour of the WTMJ facilities, which are just fantastic. I don't remember if that was before or after the remodel or not, but what's really cool and some of the things that obviously in Andy's time there, they've rolled out AMHD and FMHD. There's been a lot of changes for the market, but what's great about the Journal company is they've always kind of been a leader with that kind of technology. So it's been fun to kind of watch and see what's been going on in the market with those with the radio stations that Andy has. Obviously. For the company, for the Journal company, the TV, the AM, and the FM were the flagship stations for the Journal company, which actually now, I guess, I don't know if the deal is closed yet, but it will be owned by Scripps fairly soon. The Journal kind of split their print and their media up. But the stations, the Journal stations, especially in Milwaukee, historically, since I believe, how far back do they go, Andy? 1920 something?
1928, I think. was the start of when they bought. It might have been. I take that back. It was 1926 when they bought WTMJ, and it's had the same call letters and the same owners since that acquisition. So yes, you're right. It is going to change in a few months with all the broadcast properties, TV and radio, going to Scripps, and all of the newspaper side of Scripps going to the publishing side of a new company called Journal Media Group, which will include the Milwaukee Journal, Sentinel, etc. So it'll be a pure printing company, and Scripps will be a pure broadcast company.
Yeah, what's interesting is some of the things that I certainly obviously know a lot of the engineers who worked for Andy. Some of the technologies that they've come up with, even some of the tricks. They're also the AM is the flagship station for the Packers and the Bucks and the Brewers, and just some of the things they're talking about with dialing in delay to match the what's going on TV and that sort of thing. So some interesting learning things. So it really is. First of all, by the way, congratulations on your retirement. Well earned. Those stations are really fantastic, and they've really have in terms of media here in Milwaukee have certainly been the leader for many years.
Thanks. It's been a lot of fun. I've got to say I've had a long leash with Journal, and I've greatly appreciated that. But I had that with Heritage Media before that for 10 years as their vice president of engineering also, which was how I met Clay when we bought some stations in Seattle, and then diplexed out an AM station on the towers with 1090. King owned them at that time.
Well, that was also interesting is the stations I worked for that Intercom bought used to be under the Heritage Media umbrella. And I think, Andy, you were there during that time. So you actually had your hands in two stations in Milwaukee.
In fact, those stations that you own today, my former company bought in 1988. And then Intercom, they went to Sinclair in 98 when a Murdoch deal took place. And Heritage then exited broadcasting. Then I think Intercom got them from Sinclair. So I know those properties well. In fact, that was part of when Journal was pinging me to join them. I knew Milwaukee a bit from all my travel, coming in here and doing the facilities. So it was a very viable coming here. I had an idea of what I was going to face in terms of weather, so I was prepared.
Perfect.
Hey, you're watching or listening to This Week in Radio Tech, episode 243. We're here with Chris Tobin in New York, Chris Tarr in Mukwonago, Wisconsin, and Andy Laird in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Andy, the just retired VP of Engineering and CTO for Journal Broadcast Group. We're going to be talking with Andy as we move along here about some of his extracurricular activities, which are just amazing and surprising, especially to a guy like me. I think a lot of us broadcast engineers, we never seem to find time to do too many really wild outside activities. And so Andy's going to tell us about that and how his love for physical and interesting, almost extreme sports and activities dovetails with his passion for engineering. So I hope Andy's coming up with a really good story about that, exactly what we can learn about that. Our show is brought to you in part by the folks at Lavo, Lawo, lavo.com, and they're the makers of the crystal clear radio mixing console. Now, they call it a virtual mixing console because the part of the console that you touch, that the operators use, that sits in front of the disc jockeys, the operators, it's a virtual console. It's a PC running Windows 8 and running an application that looks exactly like a gorgeous radio console. And what's cool is when you design a console that way, when it's running on a touch screen, you can make all the controls very contextual. They don't have to be a button that, it doesn't do anything right now unless you're in this mode or that mode. Every button presented to you does something, and it does something that you're interested in. That's contextual for the mode you're operating in. For example, if you got a mic fader, you've got an options button, and you punch that options button, and everything that it shows you has to do with that mic being a microphone fader. The actual mixing engine for the console, it's not in the PC that you're using. You can swap that out if you need to. The mixing engine itself is rack mounted. It can be anywhere else on the network. It doesn't even have to be close to physically where the operator sits. And it has a total of 24 inputs, 24 sources, any 8 of which can be on the air at the same time. That's their 8 faders on the console. It has all the stuff that you'd expect an ordinary radio console to have. Several program buses, for example, program 1, program 2, and a dedicated record bus. So you can record liners, voice tracks, commercials, even while you're doing an on-air radio show. It has built-in, of course, Q. It has metering for that as well. Programmable scene presets which lets you recall every detail, so you can set that up for different shows, different operators. It supports guests with talkback. So let's say you have a few microphones and you want to talk back to a particular guest in the room. Then you could just touch a button while they're on the air. Touch a button and the operator's voice is inserted back into the headphones of that guest. Probably confusing that guest, but at least you can get a word to him like, hey, we need to break really soon. Also, it's very intuitive controls. Gosh, it's been 20 years ago when running through my head was a dream of a touchscreen controlled radio console. And the folks at Lavo have done it. Now, Lavo is known for making really big consoles for recording studios, for remote trucks, for television studios. And now they have had a line of smaller radio consoles for a few years now. And this Crystal Clear, the virtual console, is really something worth looking at if this kind of technology is interesting to you. And I think it might be. Also, AES EBU inputs, analog inputs, mic inputs, redundant power supply. Of course, it does AOIP. The standard built in is the Ravenna AOIP standard, which includes as a subset AES 67. So it's already AES 67 compliant. If you want to check it out on the web, go to Lavo, LAWO.com. And when you're there at the website, look under products, radio consoles, and find Crystal Clear. There's also a video there to help explain it. Mike Dosh explains how the Crystal Clear console works and what it can do for you. Thanks to Lavo for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, we're here with Chris Tobin, Chris Tarr, and Andy Laird. Yes?
I have a quick console story since you mentioned it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
We have one of our Radius consoles, or Element consoles, I'm sorry, the radio station. We have, for those of you who haven't seen the Axie Element console, they're really nice. They have these nice LEDs that label each channel. Well, one of our DJs took out a label maker, typed out labels for each channel, and stuck them on the surface, as well as the LEDs. No, I am not kidding you. I walked in and I said, okay, I suppose if that's what they want, but I just kind of shook my head as I'm looking at this, and you look at the top of the channel and, they're the LEDs. I'm like, well, what happens when you change the profile and that's no longer matches the little sticky thing you put on there, So I just thought, I was just laughing because I thought we got, that was the whole reason for getting, the changeable labels was we could get away from Dymo and labeled, tape labels and things like that. But I walked to the studio the other day and I saw that and I just kind of shook my head, turned around, walked out.
The guys who designed the Element console, if they heard that, they would be crying in their beer, I'm sure.
I know.
Did you find out? I mean, the only reason I can imagine somebody do that is because they wanted the labels down at the bottom instead of at the top.
That is exactly what they did. They we have monitor arms for our automation system, and they pull the monitor arms down because they're touch screens, so they're right in front of them, and it covers up the LEDs. On the top row. Gotcha. So they put it down there so they could see them. So it wasn't completely ridiculous. I just kind of laughed that we spent all this money for new equipment and everything, and one of the first things you do is they stick labels all across it.
So the LED alphanumeric scribble strip was not good enough for him, so he had to make his own scribble strip.
Right, exactly. They did something new, and they're already starting to peel off for people's hands being on there, and it was just kind of I just cracked me up when I saw it.
Hey, Chris Tobin, you're in a studio that has an SAS console. Where is the label for each fader on that console? Top or bottom?
It's it's actually at the bottom, just above the on-off buttons.
Okay. So there's a readout between on-off and the fader.
There's a read-off, yeah, and then at the top is the router selector itself. So you actually have two readouts.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then you have
there's
inputs.
they're one of, I mean, we have so many sponsors, but Axia being a sponsor, some of Axia's consoles have the scribble strip, the electronic scribble strip between the on off and the fader. So it's down low. So different designs. Oh, well. Andy, what's your preference? You like the scribble strip above or below?
Well, I'd go below. I'd say every scribble strip I've ever seen has been below. You lay it out and label your faders,
Sure, sure.
For the everyday use, the programmed strip is the way to go, obviously.
Cool. All right. Hey, coming up in a few minutes, Chris Tobin's going to give us a bit of a tour of the room that he's in. Let's keep talking to Andy Laird. Andy, now we're going to move ahead in history here pretty quick, but unlike a lot of engineers like me, and I suspect like Chris Tarr and maybe Chris Tobin, you're a degreed physicist. And you got involved with college radio while you were getting your physics degree, right?
That is how it happened. In fact, my roommate, my freshman year, was president of the college radio station that the student body had voted to build. And he was going, "What are we going to do? How am I going to do this?" And I'm going, "Well, electronics is my hobby. Can I help?" And his line was, "Well, great. You're the chief engineer." And so, it's tongue in cheek. I make a joke of it, but it's actually true. My freshman year, I built a radio station. My sophomore year, I built one that worked. It was but I was hooked. And I was on this plan with MIT. It was a 3-year, 2-year plan, 3 years there, 2 years at MIT for a master's in physics. And after one quarter, my freshman year, I decided there was more to life than studying. So I went on to a normal 4-year physics plan and then did my graduate work at University of Denver in mass communications, knowing after a year or two of college radio that's where I was going to spend my career.
So if you would take us through a couple of highlights of your career, and then I want to weave the story into these extracurricular things that you do, which are pretty amazing. So where'd you move from college radio, and how'd you get involved to the point you are now?
When I went to grad school, one of the things I did was pick up a couple of weekend DJ jobs. Another passion of mine is music. And I perform, musician, and I'm passionate about classical and jazz. So I wound up at a station in Denver, an FM, that was kind of a mix of classical on Sunday night and jazz on Saturday night, and I did those two shows. It was maybe 3 or 4 months later, the all classical music station called and said, "We want you to come and do our Saturday and Sunday nights, and we'll double your salary." So I did that actually for a couple of years, finished my degree work, went into the military, was based back in Denver, Colorado Air National Guard, and found my first full-time job, which was a staff engineer at Channel 2. And that was a station that WGN had just bought and changed the call letters to KWGN, and they were constructing production studios to do commercial work, all color. And this was 1966, and I wound up on a construction crew. In fact, my first focus was putting coaxial cables together for color cameras, TK41Cs. Putting a connector on one of those things one connector was about a day's worth of work. Oh. So they took the young people that had pretty good eyesight and sat them at a table and here's your soldering station, go to work. And I did that for about a year and a half, and I was getting tired of well, let's put it this way, the production work didn't come. So I wound up on an operating crew. Occasionally I'd get maintenance, which was nice. But I thought if I saw one more rerun of I Love Lucy, I'd explode. So, and my military obligations kept me in Colorado. So I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought, I'm going to devote my career to radio. And where will I do that? And with my friends in Denver, it was like, wow, there's this guy. He was Gene Autry's announcer for the CBS network, and he bought these stations out in Lakewood, and it's fascinating what he's doing. Now, they were very poorly rated. By the way, it was AM only. He later added simulcast FM to it. I thought, well, I'll go check him out, and in a way, I camped out on his doorstep. I kind of pestered him. I'm looking to do something. And he finally said, well, I need a remote engineer to go out to the car lot and set the Marty up and spin records for the DJ. And, would you like to try that? And I said, sure, I'll do that. No problem. And several months went by. I did that through the summer. And I got a call one day, and he said, I'm having a party for our staff. It's our first year anniversary. And I want everybody on our staff to be there. Could you fill in from 6 p.m. to midnight Friday night on the station? And I said, well, sure I could. I'll need to come in and understand what you do. And so I did that. Well, it was on the air audition, and I got a call Monday offering me a full-time job. That was Monday through Friday. Well, I started in the newsroom, did traffic reports, and then finished with a 9 to midnight DJ show, and Saturday announced, read the commercials from stage on a live country music show out of a theater. So I did that, and then a few months later, they parted ways with the chief engineer and asked if I could fill in while they looked for a chief engineer, and I said, great, I'd love to do that. As long as I'm filling in, can I fix a few things? Oh, sure, break a leg. And from that came the chief engineer position, and here I am now working directly for the owner of the station. He's the person I report to. He was highly motivated to have an incredible radio station, and he might as well have been my dad. It was an amazing situation, and I engineered there for 5 years. So it was from that an amazing break came for me, and that was a chief engineer of a full-time 50 kilowatter in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh no. But that was it. So it was from Denver in 1972 to Los Angeles, at a station. Well, it's one of those places where there were only 3 of them in all of Southern California at that time: KFI, KNX, and K-Day. And the only way you ever got a job like that was somebody passed away and you were on staff and you came up in staff, or that things were in such a mess that they had to go outside. And, I've thanked my lucky stars in many ways that was the circumstance there. And however, when I arrived, I couldn't believe the mess. So it was a blessing in disguise, though, because it was an amazing crucible. It was all a co-located facility at the 50 kilowatt transmitter where all the studios, everything was done. So I learned about RF fields, even though I'd been in a 5 kilowatt co-location before. You get into a 50, you can lay a wire out on the floor that's maybe 3 or 4 feet long and get little burns on it. So in that environment, we fixed the radio station, and I had an amazing opportunity at that job also, in that the pay scale, and I had a large staff, as you can imagine. It was a union station from the 40s. Uh-huh. The pay scale, though, was way below the responsibility for, the number 2 radio market in the nation. And the deal I got was that I could have every other week to run my own business if I'd take full responsibility for the technical operation of the station. So from that, branched out to interesting consulting projects up until 1988. So I did a lot of travel.
And travel is a subject that we want to get into. Hey, Chris Tobin, Chris Tarr, we're going to take a break in a couple minutes. Any follow-up questions from either of you guys for Andy to this point before we get into the wild stuff?
I had my question for Andy. This is Chris Tobin. just out of sheer curiosity, with all the years that you've put under your belt, and again, congratulations on your retirement, enjoying the freedoms that it brings. How have you enjoyed or viewed the changes in technologies from the early days that you described to where we are today, or just to the to the last weeks of your retirement? I'm just curious, when we come back after the break, how did you enjoy watching it and learning it and understanding it and staying ahead or staying up to the minute with the changes that took place in the industry?
Sounds good. Are we going to break, or shall we go into this?
I'll tell you what. Why don't you go ahead and answer that, and we'll hit the break after you update us on Chris's question.
Right. For me, doing something better. My definition of better was how things sounded. With the musician background, I was from being a kid with a record cutter, playing the piano like 5 years old, wondering why when I recorded something it didn't sound like the piano I played. That curiosity has driven my career in the radio field, and from that, always trying something new to achieve more of what I was after for clarity or better reception to the end user was my drive. And yes, I came into it at the end of the tube era, solid state that was built a lot like tubes came in, and then along came the first ICs. That was a big disappointment for me, by the way. It was a major step back in audio quality. We had lower noise, but in came slew, distortion, elements like that. As that side got better, processing continued to improve. And I worked on building my own processing quite a bit, starting in the late 60s up until about 1980, 81. I rolled my own. So there in Denver and in Los Angeles, we ran on custom stuff. And then the manufacturers themselves really started building product that addressed the issues that I heard in my ear. And today, I'm amazed at what audio processing can do for just any format. And as computers have come onto the scene, getting great audio quality through a digital facility became a passion also, learning how to clock everything and not use bitrate converters. Then that also brought me into the whole idea of digital broadcasting. And I got very involved at the NRSC level in the development or the testing of various vendors' products to come toward a national standard for HD radio. And then I've truly enjoyed implementing it across our company. Then I wound up with HD television in my lap, which was another phenomenal thing to have for the last 8 years of my career. So we grew too as a TV company with 15 TV stations, and converting them all to HD production has been terrific. So to me, the advancements in technology has had an incredibly great effect on what we can deliver to viewers and to listeners on a regular basis compared to the analog world that I was in 40, 45 years ago.
Well said. Well said. Hey, we are talking with Andy Laird. He's our guest and just retired VP of Engineering and CTO of Journal Broadcast Group. With me, Chris Tarr from Mukwonago, Wisconsin, and Chris Tobin, who is making his appearance from the iHeart Studios in New York. Here's why you want to stay tuned. Right after the break, we're going to be back, and Andy Laird is going to talk to us about a few interesting things like getting shipwrecked. And also climbing ruins in Cambodia and Thailand, going to Antarctica, Galapagos Islands, Tonga, Fiji, and Indonesia, and doing powerlifting. That's right, powerlifting. So I got to hear about this and how all this relates to his passion for broadcasting, if it does. Maybe it doesn't. Hey, our show is brought to you in part by the folks at the Telos Alliance and a new
product line there called ProStream. Here's a commercial to tell you all about it.
Streaming audio, it's everywhere. Wi-Fi and connected cars mean easy access to your streams or your competitors. You need the right tool to grab the advantage. ProStream X2 streaming software from the Telos Alliance. Designed for stations whose audio quality is just as important for streaming as over the air. With ProStream X2, you get premier audio processing from Omnia Audio, the same used by top radio stations around the world. Input audio from sound cards or via LiveWire and RTP stream. And for ultimate audio control, upgrade to the ProStream 9X2, adding Omnia 9 audio processing with undo technology to correct overprocessed source material. After audio processing, the ProStream X2 will encode streaming audio in multiple formats simultaneously, sending to multiple destinations. Choose from MP3, AAC, and popular AAC family members like HEAAC V2. All coding algorithms are fully licensed reference code for top quality sound. ProStream X2 is ready for adaptive streaming, another streaming feature separating you from everyone else. With multi-rate adaptive streaming, you and your listeners are freed from manually selecting the trade-off between connection stability and audio quality. ProStream X2 features control via HTML5 graphical web interface and REST API. It's cloud-ready and can be run entirely off-site at your data center. Plus, SNMP is fully supported. ProStream X2, professional streaming from the Telos Alliance.
Check it out on the web on the Telos Alliance website, telosalliance.com. Just look for streaming, and you'll find the ProStream. The X2 software that you run on a PC, and the ProStream 9X2, which has Omnia 9 processing built into it as well. And thanks a lot to Telos and ProStream for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. And by the way, I'm a user. Got them at 5 radio stations, soon to be 7, using ProStream software. All right, This Week in Radio Tech, our show 243. Andy Laird is our guest. And by the way, we got a quick tour of the WOR studio coming up in a few minutes. Chris Tobin, you're going to be ready to give us that in after Andy tells us about being shipwrecked?
Absolutely. I'm going to get my Steadicam control now.
All right. Well, I'm gonna sit back, have a stiff drink, and have Andy tell us about his extracurricular activities. And Andy, I don't know. Well, I don't know why you got involved with these crazy extreme sport. I call it, for me, they're extreme. Maybe not for you. Tell us about what you do outside of the broadcast studio.
Well, thank you. I have to tell you that in my early days of broadcasting, I lived at the station because that really was my life. And I suppose if there had been a cot there, I would have used it. But I began to realize that I wasn't taking my vacations, and then I learned the value of that in being more productive after you go away and get out of the forest and out of the trees, so you can kind of see the forest. And I started adventure travel. It was about 20 years ago, and this kind of went parallel with a lot of the sports I enjoy doing. I was a swimmer in college, and then needed a way to stay fit for my skiing, which was one of the reasons for going to University of Denver, to be honest. And so I took up weight training. And that would have been in 1965, which was really early, I think, just as kind of the health club thing started coming along. And from that, it made the base where I could do other competitive sports. I played racquetball. I ran short, 10K, stuff like that. Was very avid in motorcycling, and in fact, when I got to Milwaukee, I took up MotoGP racing and did that up until about 7 years ago. But meanwhile, I started branching my diving out around the world, skiing too, but the diving was something new as far as going somewhere other than Southern California out to Catalina. So I've been to Galapagos a few times, and the shipwreck you're referring to happened to me in 2011, and I was in Indonesia, and we had chartered it was like a sampan, 110 foot. It carried 20 people and a crew of 18. There were 19 of us, and we left the way far east side on the first day. We were anchored, having dinner at night, and a squall came through around 8:30. We were outside this little island. Unknown to us, we broke anchor. And I had hit the rack about 11:15 and 11:30, pound, pound, pound on the door. Pack only the essentials. We've punctured the hull. We're sinking. We're abandoning ship. And I was like, I thought I had a dream. What was that? Again, and we pack only the essentials. We're abandoning ship. So I had a day pack, and I'm going, what do I have? Okay, long sleeve shirt, pants, all the bug spray I can take. I will take my camera and the toiletries, and that was it. I came out through the galley. By the way, we had 3 chefs and a wine cellar on the ship. So I grabbed a bottle of wine and got into the Zodiac. And it took us an hour and a half to work our way through this reef onto the shore, and it was an island like out of the movie South Pacific, with the palm trees doing their things. Of course, it was totally dark. There was no moon, and we're out there with lights, and we had seen the beach and everything because we were maybe anchored 400 yards off the beach. But the great thing about the story was that on the backside of the island was an eco dive resort that could accommodate 20 people. There was nobody there, and it was huts on stilts, and you had a rack about 4 foot square that you had on 4 rocks that you could throw a fish on and cook, and the bathroom was down the path in the jungle. And the thing that made this incredible was, of course, we had gone to bed in a nightmare, and the next morning woke up in paradise. It was the most beautiful thing. And you talk about technology. I had proposed to a lady in Milwaukee for my second time around on the marriage side, and I had my world phone with me, and we were texting back and forth, and then we had an uplink on the ship and everything with Wi-Fi and sharing things. And of course, all of a sudden, I went silent. And in the group, there was one lady. She was from Quito, Ecuador. Her cell phone could send texts. So we each sent texts. I sent one to Donna, I'm okay. Of course, it was labeled Cisneros, whatever, in Spanish. And
Sure.
and we're okay. I'm on an island. The ship sank, and all's okay. When everything's together, I'll text you. When I've been rescued. and it was 10 days, and she
What?
came apart. Yeah,
It was
took
10
days
days?
to get us off this thing.
Oh, Gilligan, my goodness.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The great thing though, it was high tide when the ship hit the reef and punctured the hull, so it didn't sink. It rolled over and it was caught on the coral. So we got onto the ship the next day, and I didn't lose one thing. I got all my dive gear. I got everything. So there was no loss of stuff. And so I had the owner of the eco resort brought in his dive masters, and they got fuel for the boats, and starting the third day, we were out diving, and they were bringing food in and took care of us. And of course, the ship that had the company that we chartered from paid for all that. So it turned out to be a pretty interesting adventure. And the other thing was, you mentioned Antarctica. I've dived Antarctica. I sailed a 55-foot boat with 7 other folks across the Drake Passage for a month, and we dived, hiked, and kayaked. Did a lot of video and photography. The video is interesting because it went to a Ecuadorian TV station, and they made a 60-minute special out of it. We had a leopard seal adopt us for 2 days, and we got a lot of underwater video of playing with the leopard seal. So that was really a special one.
Wow.
Then you mentioned the weightlifting. I crashed my MotoGP bike 7 years ago out on Blackhawk Farms. Turn 3 ate my bike. It didn't eat me though. It was my friends were going, "You didn't come around, you know," and we were, but the ambulance didn't go out, so we knew you were okay. But the got me to thinking, let's see, I'm late 60s here. Maybe it's time to hang up the racing leathers. And I wonder if there's another sport I could do in competition and not look like a fool. And so I checked out if there was something around weight training and got with a group in Phoenix. They said, well, we think that not only is powerlifting something you are really capable of doing, but we think you can set a national record in a deadlift meet that's in 6 months, and we've signed you up for it. So
Okay.
that's how it got started. And
All right.
and so I've taken the national title now 3 years in a row. The last time in November in Dallas. That's the Masters Nationals, and I'm lifting in a league called NASA, Natural Athlete Strength Association. And it's been fun. It's just a whole new side of me that I didn't know I could do. And found out I could do it, so I have been. It's great.
Man, if I'm ever in a dark alley with Andy Laird, I want him on my side. Wow.
Yeah.
Chris Tarr, what do you make of this? This powerlifting and sailing and shipwrecking?
Well, I'll tell you what, it is probably the exact opposite of what you would imagine from a guy who does radio engineering.
Yeah.
No, it's fascinating, and it does bring up an interesting, to bring it back around to tech, it does bring up something interesting. And Andy actually kind of touched on it a little bit is, find a hobby and take a break from radio life. Because, I am probably the most guilty of this of anybody, with all the stations I consult for and contract for. And, I very rarely take vacations because I enjoy what I do so much that I kind of live it. And, it's worthwhile to find something that you're passionate about that has nothing to do with broadcasting.
Nope, Chris Tarr, we lost you. Well, Chris Tobin, you're on
there.
over there on the. Oh, there we go. He's back. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
There you go. So it's interesting because I didn't know these things about Andy. It's very fascinating. But I think there's a good tale in there about, finding something you're passionate about outside of what you do and get out and do it. It's fantastic.
I guess for some of us, that's our kids. Chris Tarr, you post a lot about your kids and what you do with them and how much you care about them. That's kids are, a necessary pastime if you got kids.
well, yeah, no, we do our geocaching and we have things like that, but it is a good tale if you're, I know there's a lot of guys in the position I have that don't do those things, that don't have a pursuit outside of working. And, sometimes with this job, that's easy to get caught up on. So find something you like to do and get out and do it.
It sounds like it's a good subject for the topic of work-life balance. And I know plenty of engineers. Chris, I'm like you. I love what I do, but sometimes it crosses my mind. Gee, should I be, spending some time finding something else that I enjoy? And Andy, obviously you did. Andy, how do you feel that you said you were good at multitasking when I talked to you a couple weeks ago? Does what you found that works for you, would you really recommend it to everybody else, or you still got to just work and find what works for you?
Well, I think that's what you have to do. You have to find what works for you. you fall into it. It's being aware, though, like about what do I want to accomplish, and then having in your mind at least some measurement method, so that you can see whether you're actually progressing with what goal you want to set, and then find a way to have fun doing it. In other words, you're not strictly on this path, you're wiggling along it, you're making your progress. But for me, well, my first wife accused me of never working a day in my life. She says, all you do is go somewhere and have fun. Now I recommend that, okay?
That's great. Oh, that's great. Chris Tobin, do you have fun doing what you do? You sure seem to.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely do. And I was just talking to a mutual friend of ours, Mitch, and we were talking about the fact that he enjoys what he does, and gets time with the family, takes time off, and I agreed with him. And two things I take away from Andy's stories. One, interestingly enough, when he's awoken about the fact that the ship is sinking and he's in a state of mind that's just like, what are you talking about? And doesn't panic, just grabs what he has in the day bag, gets up and goes, sort of like what you would do when you get that phone call for the transmitter being off the air. And then the other item is just getting away and taking a break from your rigors of the day and recharging the batteries. I think that was the best, is the fact that ship is sinking, you're stranded somewhere, and he's just like, okay, yeah, well, let me get my day bag and go out and see what we do, and wake up the next morning, wow, this is great. And 10 days later, he's still there. I mean, what better way to do things?
So, Andy, we're gonna have a final segment of the show, and this is the part where I'm looking for sage advice. We'll do this right after our last break here. So here you are. You're on the order of what, about 70 years old or so? You've just retired?
70. I'm closer to 72, I guess.
Okay, and think about 50 years ago when you got started in broadcasting. What advice now would you give to somebody who's either starting or has been doing it for a little while? Now, guys like me and Tarr and Chris Tobin, we may not be so open to advice. we're pretty well along the way. But guys who are starting out in engineering, probably they're starting out they're in IT, and they're learning about audio and learning about RF, because that seems to be the way that people are going. What inspiration, advice can you give to them? Think about that if you would, and we're going to take a break and be right back. We're also going to have a quick tour of the new WOR studio in New York at the iHeart Radio complex there in the former AT&T building. So, hey, our show is brought to you in part by the folks at Axia, and they have a brand new audio console that is finally now shipping. This console is absolutely gorgeous, and I'll shut up and let Clark Novak tell you all about it.
Hi, I'm Clark Novak from Axia Audio, and I'm here to introduce you to the new Fusion AOIP mixing console, the newest modular AOIP console from Axia, the company that invented AOIP for broadcast in 2003. Let's take a quick look at some of the unique features found only in Fusion. After 10 years and more than 5,000 consoles, people constantly tell us how attractive Axia consoles are. But a console isn't designed for show, it's made to work in challenging conditions 24 hours a day, year after year. So here's a look at some of the special design choices Axia has made to ensure that Fusion meets that challenge. Some companies cover their console work surfaces with paint, which can rub off, or with plastic, which can tear or be ripped. Not Fusion. Its work surface is all metal, solid aluminum. Not only that, its double anodized markings are sealed in. They can't ever rub, peel, or flake off, which means that Fusion will still look as good in 5 years as it does the day you begin using it. At one time or another, we've all had the task of replacing light bulbs in console switches. Fusion does away with all that. All switches are lit with LEDs made to keep on shining for hundreds of thousands of hours. Oh, and those switches themselves are aircraft grade, specially sourced and tested by us to sustain millions of on-off operations without failure. So you won't ever have to worry about replacing those either. Fusion's frame is made from thick machined aluminum too. It's RF proof, but also lightweight. No worries about whether your tabletops can hold up. Fusion's designed for drop-in installation, and it's very low profile. No giant tub to intrude on under-counter space. Where other consoles use dot matrix readouts for channel displays, Fusion comes with easy-to-read, super high-resolution OLEDs above each fader. They show the assigned source, tallies when talkback or other special features are enabled, and full-time confidence meters to help prevent dead air. Talent doesn't have to wonder whether that caller is dropped or satellite feed's ready to join. They can see it clearly before they pull the fader up. No wipers to wear out on our rotary encoders. They're all optical. Some of the most important parts of any console are the faders. One of the reasons faders fail is from dirt, grime, and of course liquid that falls through the slots in the modules. Fusion's faders are special, premium, conductive plastic faders that actuate from the side, not the top. That way, dirt that falls through the surface slots falls past the faders, not into them. They stay smooth and silky nearly forever. That's a fast look at how Fusion consoles are designed to last and built to perform just as beautifully as they look. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Clark. Clark Novak speaking for Axia and the new Fusion console now shipping. Contact your nearest Axia dealer for information on Fusion. And by the way, your Axia dealer is going to be receiving training about Fusion within the next couple of weeks. So, ask him now, but save your really, really tough questions. Or you know what? Ask him the tough questions, and then your dealer can ask us during the training, okay? How about that? Good deal. All right, and Fusion joins the whole line of Axia consoles that are just all over the world and very popular. I got some, in fact, I think everybody on this podcast probably has some Axia consoles. All right, we're talking to Andy Laird, just retired from Journal Broadcast Group. And on the show with us is Chris Tarr and also Chris Tobin. Andy, the advice I was looking for, what do you have to tell somebody from your sage position here?
Well, you bet. This covers a lot of white areas. So the first thing I think, for me anyway, the foundation was learning about sound and the overall sound of things, and then having a goal for what you're after through the transmission system to the end listener. That'll serve as the overall driver for your career in radio. Then don't ignore all of the training materials that are available to you from SBE. I'd recommend that you, while you may have your IT background, that you start chipping away at the materials that you can learn that are specific to broadcasting, that will bring the picture of what goes on in a station into your mind, adding some clarity to the function that you bring from an IT side to achieve the results of what we need in a broadcast facility. As don't be hesitant to put together a network of experts for your ability, for your opportunity to ask questions. So go to meetings, go to the NAB in Las Vegas. If your employer won't fund that, try to fund it for yourself. The opportunity to meet with manufacturers and your peers is phenomenal for an education. Do that. Then I would also suggest public service, that there are committees involved for the standards of the United States broadcast system, mainly the National Radio Systems Committee. I would look at joining that committee and attending the meetings. You can do it all by phone. If you can do it in person, of course, you're going to get the opportunity to meet with your peers again, understand what they're working on. But your education of the industry will grow as a result of that effort. I think that's how I would go about it as a starting person with an IT background.
Great advice. Great advice. Andy, thank you very much. Chris Tarr, any last questions? You're the closest guy to Andy there.
No, I think I was really looking forward to this episode, so I'm glad I was able to make it. Andy is, like I said, I've known a lot about Andy's work for a long, long time, so it's great to learn more about the person.
Well, speaking of learning, I'm
we've
sorry,
had
ahead,
a
Andy.
thaw here too. We've had a thaw, so maybe it makes you want to go to McWanago.
Yeah, there you go.
You're about 20 miles away, I think.
Andy was talking about learning and keep learning. I love that advice. I just love to learn as long as it's not too confusing for me. And so right now, Chris Tobin is going to take over the teaching position, and the three of us are going to, and everybody watching the podcast, are going to take a few minutes and learn about the new WOR studio in New York at the iHeart Media complex there in New York City. Chris Tobin, it's all yours.
Uh-oh. Yes, I am here at the WOR studios in what is known formally as the AT&T Long Distance Building, or AT&T Long Lines. And I'll use a term that goes back a long ways. Transatlantic communications was done here in this building. It's not done here anymore. It's now the co-location for what they call carrier-neutral ISPs and people who do selling and buying of bandwidth. About 50 of them are here in this building. So it was back in 1932. It's a 27-story building. It's 369th largest building in New York City. That's the fact. Those are the fun facts of the building for the learning experience for those. It's an Art Deco building. So when you do travel through Manhattan and you're touring about in Lower Manhattan, you'll see a large building with 2 spires. That's the building I'm in right now. That's all I'm going to tell you. The rest is up to you to research. So we're in the studios of WOR. This is a Rubicon console that you'll see, and I'll move the camera in a moment. And the Rubicon console is very nice, simple setup. We'll turn on some meters so you can see some little movement there, and I'll move the camera. And there you go. Let's see. All right. This is the Rubicon, very straightforward console. And then you have your automation systems, and I'll point this way. That's the next-gen automation. Then we have here our call screening. WOR 710 is a talk station, talk news and sports. And then there's a guest position here with a phone. Oh, that's a VX Telos, in case you didn't recognize it, just to remind you. And then the several monitors at the guest positions, as you can see, and the microphones on the short mic boom, so the sight lines from the host position can be easily attained, and you can keep eye contact with your guests. And if you look carefully in the background there, I'm trying to get the camera to focus. That is the on-air studio currently for the evening sports show. It's 7:06 p.m. Eastern. That's the clock you see. It's an ESC clock. And it's another set of Rubicon consoles in various positions for people to broadcast from. And the console, the furniture, is forecast consoles. So those asking, because people always ask what the furniture is. And then we'll just take a view back here from the position. This is where Len Berman and Todd Zinski do their shows from. And it's a pretty hot little setup. And let me see if we move around. And of course, if you need to see what's going on around the world, we have right now 2 TV monitors. And I'll bring up one of them here. We'll do this. Turn off the microphone.
And in terms of a
not sure if you can hear that very well.
the West is making with Iran, that
okay. That happens to be France 24 TV. So right now we're watching television from France. So keep up on what's going on in the world around us. Let me put the microphone back on. And as you can see, we have lights, standard sound-resistant doors, walls that are nice and thick, and that's pretty much it. And then there's the producer's studio position. Not sure if you can see it very well. Maybe you can. And that has a smaller version of a Rubicon console there, and monitors, call screening, and the sort. All the rooms, from what I'm told, can go to air as you would expect. So they're all routable through various routing systems. And that's pretty much it here. I can't go anywhere else at the moment. I don't have a mobile setup. Maybe the next time we come back, which we will, do this. We'll get down here. There we go.
So, something I actually I visited before, and the color scheme didn't really speak to me. But now that you're showing it, I'm paying attention to the wall color and the colors of the sound panels there, the sound absorption panels. It actually looks like it's brighter than. So many radio studios seem to be dark. A lot of times it's because the acoustic foam is a charcoal gray, and it looks like that room is bright and cheery, and you can just have a good feeling and good energy working in that room. Do you feel that way?
Yes, actually, I remember when they built the facility some years ago. Part of the design was to use earth tone approaches and to make it lively, cheery, as you would say, not dark, but bright and warm. And the wall panels are a light color. There's only one wall in the room that is dark. It's a blue. It's a navy blue for, I guess, contrast. Same is true in the other studios as well. The walls are very light colored. However, there's one shade of darkness just to sort of give a contrast. But it's very, very warm, very lively. You definitely do not feel like you're isolated from the sunlight being gone. I mean, it's a really nice setup. And the layout, the room to work, everything that you would need for a nice flow in a workflow in a studio is well thought out here at the studios WOR.
Chris,
Man, like I said, I'd love to get Josh Haddon on the show to tell us about the design of those studios. One thing that I I remember from being there is the freaking labyrinth you had to go through to get to some of these rooms. I always had to get at the time a Clear Channel employee to walk me around because I got so lost.
Yes, you are absolutely correct. The hallways, it's sort of like walking through the Pentagon. You basically can get lost and find yourself in a place, and the doors are secure in some areas, so if you trip the alarms, people will come and find you eventually.
There you go. Andy, I'm sorry, you said something.
Oh, I was going to ask Chris if they have the studio set up for video for webcasts.
Actually, they do. Not the studio I'm in, but the studio that I was showing you to the other side. There are lights, LED lights set up for video. Yes, they do have that. Yeah, this is not a primary studio. I believe the primary studio has all the video gear.
Okay.
All right. Chris Tarr, last comments?
Nothing. I got nothing.
I got nothing. I'm going to be looking up some of these places that Andy's been to. I got to remind myself where Galapagos is, and I think it's somewhere
west of Ecuador, about 600 miles.
Okay,
and it's an absolutely amazing place because it is where Darwin did some of his research on species, and there's all these currents that come and spin around the islands. It's the wildlife, both the bird and sea life, is just amazing there. In fact, on these trips, my whole plan was never to repeat any, but the first time I dove at Galapagos, well, let's put it this way, I went back and did it again.
Wow. All right. Well, I guess it's not driving distance from Nashville, so I'll have to make other arrangements. Our guest has been Andy Laird. Our show has been This Week in Radio Tech with Chris Tobin in Manhattan. He's been broadcasting to us live from the new WOR studios at iHeartMedia there. Chris Tobin, thanks for being with us. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
And also Chris Tarr from Mukwonago, Wisconsin. Chris Tarr, glad you could make it back. I hope to have you back a little bit more often here on This Week in Radio Tech.
Well, as always, thanks for having me.
All righty. And Andy Laird, thanks again to you too. Thanks to our sponsors, Lavo and the Crystal Clear console, ProStream and their new X2 and 9X2 audio processing and streaming software products, and also the folks at Axia with the Fusion console. Also, thanks to Andrew Zarian and the GFQ Network. Stay tuned to the GFQ Network for lots of good things to watch on all kinds of crazy subjects. I mean, this is probably the boringest show they have. So you got to tune into Matt Men and the Friday Free for All, and they have a tech show or two or three. Yeah, What the Tech? They got What the Tech. So tune into those, and you will enjoy it. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye bye, everybody.